I'm going to begin with a sharing about true presence from Thich Nhat Hanh.
When you love someone, you have the tendency to offer him or her something. You want to make him or her happy. And you are inhabited by the energy of love. And that is why you have the desire to make him or her happy. As I have said, love has the power to heal, to nourish, to bring happiness, and to transform suffering. And the practice of mindfulness can produce love. The true elements of true love can be produced by the practice of mindfulness. And when you have that love in you, you are alive, you are peaceful, you are happy, and you can make the other person happy. Usually when we want to make the other person happy, we want to give him or her something. But the most precious thing you can give him or her is not something that you can buy with money. It's your true presence. You have to be there for him and for her if you truly love him or her. And in order to be there, you need the practice of mindfulness. And what you want to offer your beloved one is your true presence. How can you love if you are not there? To love means to be there for him or for her. And to be there is a practice. In the Buddhist tradition, when you begin to breathe in mindfully, you bring your mind home to your body. And when mind and body are together, you are truly there. In our daily life, very often our body is there, but our mind is not there. We are not truly there. It's impossible to love if you are not there. So practice mindful breathing. Bring your mind home to your body can help you to be there. Our breath is something like a bridge linking mind and body. And the moment when we pay attention to our in-breath and breathe in mindfully, we bring our mind home to our body. And we are there in just 2 or 3 seconds. And you can go to your beloved one, looking in his eyes or her eyes, and you can say, darling, I'm here for you. Your presence is the most precious gift that you can make to your beloved one. When you love.
So good morning again on this bright and sunny day. And as we listen to Thich Nhat Hanh, he shared with us that the most precious gift that we could offer another is not material in nature, cannot be bought with money. It is the gift of our true presence. And when he says true presence, what he is meaning is living in the flow of our divine nature, right here and right now. Now that is often easier said than done for many of us. And all too often, when we interact with others, our bodies are physically present in form, but many times our minds are preoccupied. They are elsewhere, preoccupied with our personal agendas, with our stories, and often our thoughts are filled with the would've, could've, should'ves of yesterday, or what I need to do later on today, or maybe even tomorrow. Also, all too often when we are interacting with others, we are not fully aware and present to what is most alive in our hearts, let alone what is most alive in the hearts of others. Most faith traditions agree with Thich Nhat Hanh in believing that love has the power to heal and to nourish our souls. And Thich Nhat Hanh also shares that in order to love, we must be present here and now to what is alive within us, within others, and to be the presence. You see, my friends, when we offer ourselves as the true presence, when we are flowing from our divine nature, the space opens. It's not about what we are doing, but it's about who we are being. And in that space, compassion opens up, empathy opens up, appreciation fills the space, wisdom fills the space. And as that, all of those powers of our divine essence we talked about give rise within our energy field, within the spaces among us, between us, then we are lifted individually and collectively above all the forms of fear. And the practice of mindfulness and our breath are essential practices, because all too often we live from our personality selves, our human nature. And so when we find ourselves not being mindful, not being present as the presence, we just return to being mindful of that. And then we get to choose again as we continue to breathe deeply. The first two practices of living originally in the series that we have been journeying through over several weeks employ mindfulness practices. Practices 1 and 2. Through the practice of radical self-awareness, we are asked to be mindful of what is alive in our thoughts. What are we thinking? What are we feeling? Not only in our emotions, but the sensations of our body, to be aware of our actions. And then we are also being asked to be in the awareness of what is, and to be in the full acceptance of what is, knowing that all things are opportunities that call us home. And when we look at the practices, the third and fourth practices of living originally, unlimited forgiveness and universal benevolence, not only are we called to be mindful of who we are being, within our own self, so to speak, our thoughts or our emotions, but we're also asked to be mindful of who we are being, how we are showing up. What is are we living from our presence or from our personality self? And then we get the choice to move from living from our pain and suffering, our personality, to moving into living mercy, appreciation, kindness, and generosity, which all flow from the stream of living present and as the presence. So that brings us to our fifth practice of living originally, which is the practice of compassionate communication. And so the practice of compassionate communication connects us deeply, very deeply to the core of our being and our own internal experiences, and in turn allows us to connect deeply to the deepest parts of others. And the intention of compassionate communication is twofold. And they are the same that in all of the practices. One, that through the practice of compassionate communication, radical self-awareness, universal benevolence, and all the other practices that we have been exploring, that the intention of them all is about our own personal transformation. And what does that transformation mean? It means that we relinquish living from our personality selves in our unawake state, from our pain state, and then we move into the embodying of our divine nature. And when we practice each of these mindfulness practices, and we move from dying to the old and living our divine essence and being reborn anew and anew, then we live from our original selves, or as Thich Nhat Hanh would say, living in the flow of our true presence. And so compassionate communication includes the forms of communication, meaning the spoken word and how we communicate in written text. And it also includes the practice of listening. And so today I'm just going to be able to introduce communication as we look at the practice of right speech. But before we go there, I thought it would be important to share what compassionate communication is not. So number one, many of you have heard of nonviolent communication, which is also called compassionate communication, and that is the work of Marshall Rosenberg. And they're similar in essence. It's about connecting heart to heart, soul to soul, being in the presence of our greatness. However, some of the techniques that are employed are different. So I just want to make sure that you're aware that this is not Marshall Rosenberg's work. It is based on a Buddhist practice of right speech, which I will get to in a moment. Compassionate communication is not also about changing another person, getting them to agree with you, getting others to do what you want them to do. Wouldn't that be nice sometimes? It's not about proving you are right, getting your way, or getting them to understand you. You might hesitate and say, or at least I did, well, don't we want people to understand us? And yes, that is true. But we go back to what is the original intention. It's not about getting anything. It's about being the presence. It's about living from our original selves. And when we are there, we don't have to do anything, just allow the flow of our wisdom, our love, and our life to be the leading force. So let us take a look on the aspect of the practice, our communication aspect. And again, the communication is about through our speaking and through written form. And this, Robert Brummett, not only is he a unity minister, I also share that he is a devout Buddhist and has studied and has gone to study with Buddhist monks. And so he does infuse here Buddhist practices in his teaching. And so he draws upon the Buddhist practice of right speech. And right speech comes from the noble truths of enlightenment in the Buddhist path. And so I want to take a moment for us to just take a look at what right means. in our duality thinking personality selves, we have black and white, right and wrong. And right here is not defined like that. It is defined as right speech is when we are communicating from that space of being the presence. We are in alignment with principle and truth, and we are flowing from our divine nature. Right is not meaning a moral code that we follow or rules of communications or commandments. It is not about etiquette of proper ways to pronunciate or how we say our words or any other form of rigid rules. And so I want to share with you what the guidelines of right speech really is. That since we looked at what it's not, I would like to share with you. Some of you have seen this. I've seen this posted on Facebook, other social medias, and I'm sure many of you are aware of Buddhist practices. So right speech means that before you communicate, you allow yourself to stop, reflect, and ask 3 questions. Is it true? Is it kind? And is it necessary? So let's take a look at the first. Is it true? So when we ask ourselves and we're reflecting on this question, is it true? Again, we need to be mindful. We need to be self-aware. Is what I am wanting to communicate or have communicated in alignment with principle and truth? Is it factual? It doesn't vary from person to person. My jacket is black. My shirt is red. There's a certain temperature outside. It doesn't vary from person to person. And then when we want to know, are we really speaking truth? We have to stop and reflect and say, am I presenting my opinion as fact? How often are we in our my truth with a lower M? Well, this is how I see it. We don't even say it that. We're just blurting out, this is the way it is. We want it to be a certain way, and we're communicating from that place of not being truly present. Now, I am not saying that we never share an opinion with each other or how we view something, but in this practice of right speech, we identify it as such. Well, in my opinion, I am believing this, or my intention here is this, or how I am seeing this is this. And when we can classify it or speak those words that this is my opinion, this is my intention, this is my belief, we can open the space because it signals, okay, could there be another way to perceive this situation? Are there other possibilities of how this can be viewed? Is there other possible ways to see this person before me, especially when I know I am not seeing them true and whole and complete, but of wrong, as a problem, as broken, as on and on and on. So one of the true signs that we know that we are out of right speech in is it true, if we are communicating from being triggered or in our resistance, or we are coming from a very reactive state where we don't take that breath. And so when we find ourselves being reactive, being triggered, we can take that deep breath or Maybe later on, after I've communicated with somebody, I realize that I was being insistent that my view was the only view there was. I can take a pause again, take a deep breath, and we bring us back to being mindful. And in that mindfulness, we get to explore some things. We get to ask, what is the motivation behind my communication? And if it's to be right or get my way, is that connected to maybe perfectionism showing up? And if I got something wrong or if I'm not right, somebody won't love me or they'll see me as less than. Or is it about me having to have all the answers and always being the authority and telling people in my possibly in my personality self and my controlling nature, this is the way it is? Am I trying to avoid something unpleasant? Sometimes we can tell untruths from very small things like maybe I'm asked to, well, maybe not right now, but before COVID, I'm asked to go over to someone's house for a gathering. And instead of saying maybe I'm tired or I just need to have some space right now, we say, you know what, I have a really bad headache. Oh, I didn't know my son was popping over. And sometimes we may say those things because we think we're going to hurt someone's feelings, so on and so on. And so some of us may see that as a little white lie, but nevertheless, is it true? And then it could be even more serious. You know, I've had people show up for spiritual counseling, and one woman in particular who knew in her heart of hearts that she did not want to be in the marriage that she was in. And her husband asked her to go to counseling because things, you know, were just not jiving in the relationship. And even though she knew she was out of it, she really wasn't going to put her heart into the counseling. She was going along with it because she was afraid she didn't have a job and she was afraid she could not make it on her own. Is it true? Or are we showing up in a facade? Also, we can be mindful and reflect, what am I fearful of? In this moment, if I'm being triggered, have anger, anxiety, frustration, what might be beneath that? Do I feel like I or another is out of an alignment? Now, when we have right speech, it doesn't mean we never agree. And we'll talk about that a little bit next. Disagree. But it's how we're showing up when we do that. And again, what are my feelings really about? And so as we go through the week, and as we go through all of these practices, we have to be gentle with ourselves. Because just like all the other practices that I've shared before, universal benevolence, deep self-acceptance to what is, being self-aware, all unlimited forgiveness. These practices are not always easy, especially if we've gone on automatic pilot, living from the patterns, living from our personality selves that are so ingrained in us. So we must be gentle. And it requires practice, discipline, and devotion. You know, just like we would learn how to possibly play an instrument, the piano, the trumpet, the drums, or learn a new language, We don't expect to sit down unless you are a virtuoso and start, playing masterfully or speaking the language masterfully. No, we know that it requires our practice, our attention, and our devotion. But all too often, when we are on our spiritual journey, we don't always give the attention and the devotion. And we sometimes get impatient with ourselves and we could say, you know what, this stuff doesn't work. Oh, you're expecting me to be a saint. When I taught compassionate communication once, no, it's just about on this journey, you have a choice. There's no have tos. Do you want to live from the truth of your being? Do you have a desire to be present with people, to be the presence? Well, if that answer is yes, and you want to evolve to be an expression of the light that you seek, then it will require masterful devotion and practice. And as we journey along, we also must recognize that we will make missteps. Sometimes in our communication, we will want to have it right. We will raise our voice, so on and so on. But right in the flow of our breath, we can recognize it and come back to what is up, what is alive within us. And so, my friends, since we are not quite done with this practice of compassionate communication, I know I end each service with a practice for the week. So what I call you to do this week is the practice of asking yourself, am I physically present here and now? Am I elsewhere? Am I thinking about something else? Is my personal agenda always front and center? And are you the presence? Are you being your pain and suffering? Or are you breathing deeply, returning to your breath and choosing through the power of dominion, what divine quality would I like to energize and breathe into this space? And so I close this morning with a story, a noble truth story written by Thich Nhat or shared by Thich Nhat Hanh. So if you'd like, close your eyes and allow these words to fill you on a very deep level. A 10-year-old boy I know was asked by his father what he wanted for his birthday, and he didn't know how to answer. His father is quite wealthy and could afford to buy almost anything he might want. But the young man only said, "Daddy, I want you." His father is too busy. He has no time for his wife or his children. To demonstrate true love, we have to make ourselves available. If that father learns to breathe in and out consciously and be present for his son, he can say, "My son, I am really here for you." The greatest gift we can give to others is the gift of our true presence. "I am here for you" is a mantra to be uttered in perfect concentration. When you are concentrated, mind, heart, and body together, you produce your true presence. And anything you say is a mantra. It doesn't have to be in Sanskrit or in Tibetan or Latin. A mantra can be spoken in your own language. Simply, "Darling, I am here for you." And if you are truly present, this mantra will produce a miracle. You become real. The other person becomes real. And life is real in that moment. you bring happiness to yourself and to the other person. My dear friends, may you be present, living from your true presence this week. Namaste.